So, Tech Talk Tuesday, we started talking about topics at the start of each month. And so the last couple topics starting in 2026, we had accounts, Chromebooks, and now we're going to start March off with software. And so it's not uncommon as you're supporting your sites that you're going to see an Incident IQ ticket flow into your dashboard and there's some kind of software request. And a lot of times it's like deer in the headlights. You're like, all right, what do I do with this? How do I resolve this? I know back in the day with Windows 10, we would just look inside of Software Center and see if it was there, and then we can install it. But a couple processes have changed, and we just wanted to review how software is deployed, how we support it, and just to kind of define your role as you're supporting your sites with software. So let me go ahead and jump into this. Now, before we get into software, there's one important thing when I was talking with the sysadmin crew is we need the machine to kind of be prepared to receive the software. And so we came up with a pre-deployment checklist. And so where you get involved is if we could get everyone on the same page to do this each and every time for the machines that need software on tickets, I think it's going to make things a lot smoother, a lot better. Actually, as you're working any ticket that has to do with, a Windows machine, this is going to be a tremendous help. Now, before the machine can receive any kind of software, we have to make sure that PDQ is communicating to it. So I'm going to show you guys this short little tutorial about PDQ, and let's go ahead and take a watch here.
All right, when we think about software, what needs to come to mind is tech tools and PDQ. Let me train you guys a little bit about that. So first off, tech tools is going to be located inside of Teams, and it's best to link it to your OneDrive. So when you go to Teams, go to FCS Tech Support, Sysadmin Support, and then there's two options. There's Post, that's where all the chat happens, and then Shared. When you head over to Shared, you're going to look in Sysadmin Support, and then there's a folder called Tech Tools. I kind of made it a different color, so it's an orange color. And then if you hit the three dots at the top, see right here, three dots, we're going to hit Add Shortcut to OneDrive. And what that'll do is it'll put the Tech Tools folder, all those files into your OneDrive. So hopefully it makes it a lot easier. So let's say you're working on an impacted machine and we need to get PDQ agent set up. It's not communicating for some reason, so we need to uninstall and reinstall the PDQ agent. Here's what you do. Log into the impacted machine as your elevated account. And the reason for that is you've got to run those files as elevated. But when you pull up a web browser, sign in as your standard account because we've got to get to your OneDrive standard to get to the Tech Tools files. All right, once you signed in, what I like to do in ClassLink is I'll usually put some favorites down at the bottom right there, like I've got my OneDrive. So if you right click it, you can add to favorite. Right now it is my favorite, so it just says remove. Let's say I go to Microsoft 365, I can hit right click add. But anyway, once you're in OneDrive, on the left-hand side, you're going to look for My Files. And here I am. I've just got to sign into my standard account one more time. Okay. On the left-hand side, it says My Files. And then we're going to find the Tech Tools folder. And again, we made the color orange just to make it stand out a little bit. Hopefully that helps. So when you click on Tech Tools, we're looking for the PDQ agent folder. There it is, PDQ agent. There's two files in here. There's the uninstaller executable, and then there's the MSI installer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download. And if you look at the top in the browser, it's got the download. It shows it's downloading. All right, let me go ahead and exit back, and then we'll go ahead and install the other one too. So I'm going to have both files downloaded. Okay, now that they're downloaded, I'm going to open the folder. And it's going to say Windows protects your PC, don't run. And then it clears away. But what that's talking about is this is a script, and it's kind of looking at it like a threat. So I need you guys to say run anyway. Here's how you do it. Double click it, hit more info right there, and just say run anyway. Now it's going to bring up a shield at the bottom. I'm going to clear out some of these windows so we can see the shield. And the shield's going to ask you as the administrator, are you sure you want to run this, basically. So let me clear that. See the shield at the bottom? Click it, hit run, and there it pulls up the command script. Now, I usually just tap on the space bar and then it starts running right there. When it gets to the bottom, you can hit escape and it will close that program. So there it goes. It's pretty quick. It's kind of like the XML file, so it's quick. Next, we're going to do the installer. If I right click, there's no run as admin. You just double click it. See, I'm logged in as administrator. All right, I'm going to double click the file and then we're going to run this. Wait for it to highlight next. There it goes. And then we're going to accept the terms of agreement, hit install, and hit the shield again and just allow it to go. And that's it. Now you've installed the PDQ agent and we'll be able to deploy software. Thanks for watching.
All right. And Caleb, I saw that you couldn't hear the audio, but I'm going to record this anyway. And I'm going to put the file in Tech Tools. There's a Tech Talk Tuesday, too many T's, folder with any of these recordings. So you could go back and watch it later if you need to. But the gist of the video is basically if you encounter a machine that's not talking to PDQ, that's how you run the uninstaller and the installer. And it's rare that you come across that. It's not going to happen often. I know Richard and I kind of talked through it one time and how to do it. And the biggest hang up we had was sign in as a standard account. And so that's why I was saying to sign in as the elevated account. Now, we don't want to make a practice of that. I did kind of have a back and forth with the sysadmin. I talked with Sean. As a best practice, and for cyber security, you want to be logged in as your standard account and then elevate, right? That's your best practice. But if you're doing it for a single purpose, you're not trying to browse the web or check your email or look at other sites. You don't want to be doing that on your elevated account because that's a way to get your elevated account taken away real quick. You want to do everything on your standard account because it kind of isolates that machine and it doesn't build that elevated account as the profile. But that's just kind of a side note. I wanted to let you guys know that. But all of that to say, if PDQ is good and we've got it installed, it's communicating, it's looking at the machine, here's the pre-deployment checklist. And if we could all do this each and every time we see a software ticket or really any ticket that has to do with a Windows machine, here's what we want to do. So first off, check one ed tech. One ed tech, you want to see, is the software listed in one ed tech? And if it's not, we may need to create a different kind of ticket. And that's the reason I put that up top is because that'll really quickly get that ticket resolved. Or it might have like a denied status, and then we could just do a screenshot of that, throw it in the ticket, and then simply close it out. But one ed tech is going to be the first thing you look at for software because we have to see, is this approved? Is it denied? The next thing, each and every machine, we want to make sure that it has the client network, that third octet IP. If you look at the IPv4 address, the third octet should be between the 0 and 9 range. That's the client. If it's on anything else, it's a guest. It's not seeing it as being part of the domain. So if the machine is on the domain, then we're good. We can move on to the next thing. The other thing is, has the machine installed all the updates? And we're finding that to be more and more crucial with our Windows 11 machines, is making sure that all the drivers are up to date, the BIOS is up to date, etc. And we're going to jump into that a little bit deeper. So I'll tell you guys about that. And then also IIQ inventory. That might sound a little disconnected because you're like, what does inventory have to do with it? But I'll show you a little bit about that and how that's going to impact the software that the machine receives. And then finally, always verify the install. And if you guys had read the email from me yesterday, I was talking a little bit about that, where we might have like a premature resolution of a ticket because there's no validation or verification that, okay, we circled back with the user to make sure that they're good to go and that we can resolve it out. And especially with software, if they're requesting software, that's the problem. And the fix is to get the software. That's the whole point of the ticket. So you want to make sure that the software is installed, that they can run it, that they're good to go. So if we could just be on the same page with pre-deployment checklist, all of the sysadmin people, all of the department will be happy. Things are going to go a lot smoother. So, and it's really, if you think about it, when you approach any ticket, so even if it's not software, those are just good things to do on a regular basis anyway. So One Ed Tech, if you pull up ClassLink, and you guys could pull up ClassLink where you're at, and there's an icon, you'll see it says One Ed Tech Trusted Apps. Sometimes people just call it Trusted Apps or One Ed Tech or the older, like, well, yeah, One Ed Tech Trusted Apps. It's kind of new-ish, and it's just a place where we could find out what's the vetting of that software. So Student Information Services, Ross and his team, they work on doing the vetting of the software. And I remember last school year, I'd worked with Ross and Kathy Carpenter on setting up Incident IQ ticket flow. So in the past, you might have the ETC only submitting droplet request, but now any teacher, any user can submit a DRR, digital resource request. And so we're going to jump into how to do that in just a moment. But this is the place you check to see, okay, has it already gone through the process? So when you pull up that link for the trusted apps, there's a search bar at the top. And so you would search, like for this example, Subway for Subway Surfers. And then I can see it has a denied status. And then over here on the right, it shows different statuses. If it's under review or it's denied, that just means that we can't do anything with that ticket. Especially denied, we got to resolve it and say, okay, this has already been denied. But if it's under review, that's where we can still close the ticket, but just say it's still being worked on, it's still being vetted. And then they can reopen a new ticket once the status changes. So this would be a really good place to educate the end user on, okay, this is where you go to check to see if the software is approved. And all the ETCs, they've had a training on this. They know all the staff. They should pretty much know, but you may come across a few teachers who just don't understand this process. And so I want you guys to be educated on it as well. So that's what it looks like. It's in ClassLink. It's pretty easy to get to. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about, well, what happens if they search for it, but nothing's there? It's not showing. Here's what you do. So let's go ahead and watch this little tutorial real quick. And this one has no sound on purpose because I'm just going to narrate. So when you go to create the ticket, you're going to do software, digital resource request, and it has a form, right? So the form, it just wants to find out about the software, the company, what's the use? Like, how are we using this software? And what's its intended use? Because we have a legal responsibility to protect student data and privacy. And so when you go to submit that ticket, you're going to take your original ticket and resolve it as a duplicate of this new ticket. And I want the people to put the ticket in, I want it to be the requester. That way they can see all the updates and they're not having to guess and wonder, okay, what's the status of my request for this software? Because they actually put the ticket in. So if you guys guide them, it's when you go to new ticket, software, and then it's just digital resource request. It's a really simple, easy path. Do you guys have any questions on how to submit a DRR? We're good? All right. So the next thing we want to talk about, remember the pre-deployment checklist. So we checked One Ed Tech, and let's say it's approved, and we can move on to the next thing. Now we're going to say, okay, is it connected properly, and have we installed updates? So let's go ahead and watch this short little tutorial right here.
Okay, so anytime you work a ticket and you've got hands on a machine, there's a couple things we want to look at: network and updates. Let's talk about that real quick. So let's pretend like this machine is on a guest network and it is not connected to domain. So in this scenario, that's FCS guest versus FCS schools. Sometimes it may ask for a certificate or a password if you try to select FCS schools. And a majority of time, that just means you haven't run all the updates. So inside of the Tech Tools folder, we created an area that has the HP Support Assist and also the Dell Command Updates. Now, another way you can verify if it's on the right network is pull up the IPv4 address, check the third octet, and see if it's a 0 to 9 range. If it's a 0 to 9 range, it's already on the client. If it's outside of that range, it's looking at the machine as being a guest. It's not on the domain. So in Windows, you can always look for Windows updates in the settings and then just run any updates. And it's important to not only run the Windows updates, but like I said, in Tech Tools, we've got HP Support Assistant and Dell Command Update. And I want you guys to get in a habit of downloading it from there. In fact, get the Tech Tools files and just put them on a flash drive. That'll make it the most streamlined, quickest, easiest way. The only catch is once in a while you want to check those files for any updates. So periodically check the Tech Tools folder to see if we've updated any of those files. So as you run those updates and as the machine is checking in and it's getting all those crucial drivers, BIOS updates, things like that, it's just going to work a heck of a lot better, and it's going to connect to the network properly the way it should. And the reason we want to prepare the machine this way is to make it ready for software.
Okay. So again, Tech Tools, it's going to be your friend. If you guys don't have it linked to OneDrive, I would encourage you to do that immediately. And then even beyond that, put it on a flash drive. That way it's a lot quicker. So, all right. The next thing we're going to talk about is you've run the updates. Okay, so we've got install updates. We're connected to domain. All of that looks good. What's the next thing? We got to check the IIQ inventory. And so this is going to explain like IIQ inventory and what that looks like. Let me go ahead and I'll narrate this one and we'll talk about it. So let's say you're in Incident IQ. You're going to look up the asset. So you're going to get one of the serial numbers and just search it in. Okay. All right, I've got one here. I've got it from the warehouse. So maybe a kid broke the other one and I'm trying to replace it in the lab. So is it assigned to an owner? That's a good question, only if it's people that are probably front office or it's assigned to a specific person. I'm going to change it to in service. That's the status matters. So you want to make sure it's in service, make sure it's got the right location and the right room number. A lot of the software packages that we build for these labs, they might be specific for location and room numbers for the lab because different labs have different software. And then once it's in service, you've got the location, you've got the room. Probably the most important thing is meta information. We've talked about this in the past, but this is a refresher. There's two things really. You want to define who's using the machine and then what department is it a part of. So if it's a computer lab student, and then is it part of the CTA department? So that's just one example. And there's different departments, there's different users. So really depending on who uses it. And then none of that matters when you change it if you don't save it. So make sure you save it. Go down at the bottom and don't forget that step right there. It's very important. So once you save that change, Incident IQ, it talks back to our Azure Intune, which actually is linked up with our PDQ that deploys the software, is how it works. So it's like a big triangulation is how it works. And so whenever you're working a machine on a ticket that has to do with software, if it's in the right group, it's in the right location, it's going to get the right stuff, is what it really comes down to. And so that's part of the pre-deployment is we've checked the software is already approved. We're connected to the right network. We've installed all the updates, and now our inventory is up to date. So the last thing is we just need to verify, okay, now it's time to install. And this is where we can start getting up with, sysadmin support and saying, hey, we need some help. We need to get that software pushed out to this machine if we're not seeing it. And so we'll talk about that and how to get the software installed. But before we do that, this is on the Windows side. I'm going to kind of joggle your brains a little bit. So what about the Mac side, Apple? I know there might be a collective sigh, like, oh my goodness. Or I know Apple was a little bit of a speed bump, like trying to figure out, okay, how do we manage these Apple machines? But I think you guys have gotten a lot better throughout the school year, especially it's mostly the high school techs that have to do with Mac labs and things like that. But let's go ahead and watch this little tutorial. And all of you guys at this point should have access to Jamf Cloud. If you don't, just throw it in the chat and we'll be sure to get you guys access. But let's go ahead and give this a watch.
All right, so to manage your inventory for Apple, kind of like IIQ, but for Apple, it's going to be in Jamf Cloud. And so the website you would head over to is forsythk12.jamfcloud.com, and then just simply sign in with your elevated account. Got it? All right. On the left-hand side, we've got computers. That's going to be for your iMacs, MacBooks, Mac Minis, or devices. That's your iPads. Let me start with devices. So I'm going to hit Search Inventory, and I've got a serial number here. I'm just going to search it, and then I'll click on it. See, it's got the blue hyperlink. Click on it. Now this one is currently located in the warehouse. That's how I was able to find it. And by default, the room is set to student. So let's say you receive this iPad at your site, and what you need to do is just update it. Now, if there's a person that's assigned to that iPad, so it might be someone in the front office, an administrator, it might be a staff person, a teacher, then you would just search up their username. And so for this example, I'll just search my username right here, and I'll type in the username, hit search, and then it attaches myself. See right there? And then I want to define, okay, where is that? What's the department? Now, for some iPads, it might be used by nurses. So you want to mark it for nurse. It might be the school store. You can put school store or newsroom. Maybe the yearbook has some iPads. But for me, I'm a technology services. So I'd mark myself as TSV. And then for building, just whatever site you're at. So you would just mark it for that. But like for site techs that have an iPad, you guys would mark yourself as CS Technology. See right there? And then for room, default configurations would either be student, and you want to make sure it's uppercase, or staff, if it's used by a teacher, or it's admin, if it's used by a site technician or an ETC or a principal, someone like that, assistant principal. And it's basically just gives you a different set of access to applications in self-service. And let me talk about self-service real quick. So for Apple products, you would search self-service. It's usually an app that's pre-installed on the device. And then inside of self-service, you don't have to be an admin. You can install it. It's kind of like Software Center or Company Portal is right now. And so all that this would do is it would give you a list of apps that are already authorized or approved. Now, if there's something that the ticket is calling for that you don't have an app for it, as long as you've updated Jamf and you've got the inventory correct, then on the back end, the sysadmin team, we can push the apps out to the device. Now, that would be more so for Mac and iMac devices. For iPads, it would just be made available in self-service if it's authorized, if it's approved. So that's what the ticket would be all about. I'm not going to make any of those changes to this warehouse iPad, so I'm going to cancel. And then same thing with Mac. So for Mac, you would just want to put, I'm going to go ahead and just search one of the Macs right here. I've got one at North Forsyth High School, part of the CTA department. And so for Mac, you want to make sure that the site right here is set properly. So under General, you have Site, okay? And then on User and Location, you just want to fill out the big three: Department, Building, Room. And that's pretty self-explanatory. So you would put Department, and CTA might have like AV, Technology and Film, Graphic Design, Interior Design. If it's FA, that's the Fine Arts Department, Music, Visual Arts. And then we've got, it's like Special Education. You might have Yearbook. There's just different departments. And then you would put whatever building you're supporting and then just put the specific room number. And that's important because if we're having to deploy software to a lab that's at a building or a room number, now we've got it marked the way it should be. That's all that we ask you to do, and then we'll take care of the software on the back end as far as the packaging, the approval, all of that stuff. But I just wanted to let you guys know how that works as you're out supporting your sites. Thanks so much for watching.
Okay, and the knowledge base, I've put a lot of these processes in there. So if you search knowledge base under software, you can always go back and see how to update IIQ, how to update Jamf. There is a ticket with Incident IQ right now because all my embedded video tutorials have been kind of washed clean from knowledge base, but I've been throwing more of them into the YouTube channel that I've got with tutorial videos, but at least the written steps are still there. Now I'm going to talk about, well, how is the software deployed? I'm only going to briefly touch on this because it's not something that you guys have to worry about as much unless it's like self-help install. So one of the ways is PDQ, pretty darn quick. PDQ is our deployment software. It used to be SCCM in the Software Center with Windows 10, But now with Windows 10 and Windows 11, as long as we've got the agent installed on the machine, we can push out software. And that's just a screenshot showing what PDQ looks like on the back end. The other thing is company portal and self-service. And just like on the video tutorial I talked about, like self-service, which is only Apple, but self-service on iPad or Mac, you don't have to have an admin. You could just go in and install. Same thing with company portal. As long as they've got that A3 license, they can pull up company portal and it's like a self-help they can install, very similar to Software Center. Okay. And then that's just a screenshot of what that looks like. Another place software may be stored is kind of a surprising place. It's in part of the profile Chrome extensions. So if you look at the extensions, some of the applications that we have, they are just like sent out through that user's profile. And we're going to talk a little bit more about rostering and access and all of that stuff here in just a moment. But that's really the big ways that software is deployed is PDQ, company portal, self-service, and then sometimes you'll find it in the extensions, some of the software, some of the ones that like the read and write for Google, things like that. So, okay. So I wanted to show a ticket example. I really like this one from Maryland. So this was back in February 10th. So Amy wanted to request software. So Amy was asking for stage tracks. So Maryland had found out that it's already marked as staff use in trusted apps. So she went to ClassLink, the link for One ED Tech, and she found out that it's already approved. And she's asking, please push applications to users' laptop. And then she put the serial number of the laptop. Now, I'm assuming that the laptop's already up to date. It's connected to a domain. It's got the PDQ agent, so on and so forth. So now she's sending it over to the sysadmin team, and she's requesting that that app be pushed out to the user. And then the serial numbers in the ticket. And that's the comments I like. I like that she proactively just said, if you've attached the asset to the ticket, you could just say, hey, it's attached in the ticket, or you could just put the serial number on the comments here. Either way, as long as we know, okay, you verified that that is the serial number, that's what we need, because before we could push the software out, we need to know what machine is it being pushed out to. And then she also put the user information, which I like too, because when it comes to software, it might be a matter of access, or we might need to check the rostering for the user to see if, okay, do they have access to the software? And then so David from the sysadmin team, he went ahead and deployed the software and said that she may need to activate. And if you look at the word activate, that's important. That has to do with license. And so I'm going to talk about license here in just a moment as well. But that ticket, I like the flow of it because it's the request. We've got the user, we've got the machine, and then we deploy it out. We push it out. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And the fact that you're already checking One Ed Tech, just make a habit of that, and that'll make things a lot easier. So when it comes to software, here's the big question. What is your role as a site technician? What is expected of you? And pretty much it's install only. The only thing we expect is we need to get the machine to have the software installed. We have people in the building that have different roles. So you've probably heard of them. It's the ETCs or ITSs. What is it? Educational Technology Coach is what ETC stands for. And so that's really the job title is the ETC. They oversee all the instructional software Q&As. And so sometimes you might get a ticket that's like, well, how do I use this? And at the beginning of the school year, remember when we switched from land school to class-wise, line-wise? We had a few tickets about how do I use line-wise, class-wise. And what it came down to is we're like, you got to get with your ETC. You got to talk to your ETC about the how do you use that software. So whenever you think software and they're getting questions about how do I do this or how do I use it, go see the ETC. Now, this does not negate the fact that we still expect a little bit of a level of baseline troubleshooting. If it's something that you could just quickly look at and try to, maybe it has to do with Office software. That's a good example. So they're having issues with Outlook or PowerPoint or Teams. Sometimes they're just like some baseline troubleshooting, some steps you can do. I even have knowledge base articles on how to fix them. How to troubleshoot or approach issues that you might bump into. But ultimately, for more of like the setup and the instruction and the teaching, all of those software questions, just send them over to ETC. The who. Okay, so education apps team. That consists of Julie DeLong. And then Julie DeLong works under Jason Nail. And so last school year, Tony and I went over to talk to Jason and Julie about setting up a team called Education Apps. And that's a team that will deal with the rostering about, well, who has access to the software. And the biggest ask that the educational team had is they just need to know what's the username, and then also make sure that the Chrome browser is up to date. That's the biggest thing. And then so you get username, make sure things are up to date. And then, okay, what are they requesting? Let's get them rostered. So education apps, you think, okay, that's who has access. And then local admin machines. We recently had updates about this. If you looked in Site Tech Support, we talked about what is your responsibility, what's your role, and really, at the end of the day, it's only hardware support. Only hardware support, because the idea of the local PPKG, when you set that up, it has local admin access. So whoever is using that machine for a specific reason, they have all the access they need. They don't need overrides. They don't need admin credentials. They can actually operate and download and install the software themselves. And this became more of a need basis. So here's an example. So you have like these big robotic machines or whatever in the high school, and the software started to get outdated, and they didn't want to update the machines because it's a lot of money, right? So what we had to do is we had to separate it from the domain. So we made these machines that are off the domain, they're on the guest network, and they have local admin rights, and the purpose of the machine is only for that specific purpose, like robotics or CNC machines or 3D printing, poster printing. A lot of the CTA labs will have that, but it's only for designated for specific purposes. And so we're only supporting the hardware. We're going to hand the machine to the instructor and just have them install and set up the software. And if they need help with the software and the installation and all that, they can get with the ETC, or they can get with the software developer and try to get additional support that way. But hopefully, because they're instructing and they're teaching off of that, that they have enough resources to be able to set up and install their own software. So we just want to keep you guys separate from it. So otherwise it becomes like a slippery slope of, well, you helped me out with this and now this isn't working. We don't want to get caught up in that downward spiral. And then finally, license. And that's where you're looking at, okay, we need to validate the software. We need a key. We need some kind of, it's purchased by someone. And so typically it's either purchased by the site that you're supporting, some of the sites, and that's where you'll get with the ETC. Okay, did the school purchase this? Do you guys have the software key, or is it a department purchase? It might be the CTA department. And then we got to find out about the key. Now, we do package software in PDQ that has README files with the keys. And so you may have some of that. So once the software is sent to the machine, it's not uncommon that we'll send you some kind of knowledge base article saying, well, here's how you set it up once it arrives on the machine. A good example of that is the language lab software. We had a lot of that Renaissance software being pushed out, and then there were a few steps, or even the SolidWorks software. Once it's pushed out, there was a couple of steps to just insert the key and go ahead and get it set up and installed. So hopefully that'll help kind of separate, like, okay, your responsibility from other departments' responsibilities. And then I'm going to show you guys a list of all the educational apps that team oversees when it comes to rostering the software. It's actually pretty large, and we've made that available in the knowledge base. And so there's an attachment with this Excel file, and you can see, okay, if you bump into this software, this is who supports it. And a lot of it has the name Julie DeLong. So she oversees a ton of that software. But this part right here, I think, is the most helpful, because when you think about it, okay, how's it going to be used, the software? Who needs access? And then if it's a need, but it's outdated, we're going to make it a local machine and then make sure we've got those keys. So just straightforward to the point. I know we're over by a couple minutes. I apologize. Do you guys have any questions about the software overview, the training? Okay, don't see any hands. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll go ahead and put this call recording in Tech Tools, and you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys again next month.